Today is a very special day, and it's time to kickstart it with a cup of tea. You open up your food cabinet and grab the tea off the otherwise empty shelf. No one believed you could do it. I mean, people can't survive more than a few weeks without eating food, so how was anyone supposed to react when you said you wouldn't eat anything for the next 40 days? But that's exactly what you did. And when 40 came and went, you said, why stop now? Well, over 300 days later, it is the 1-year anniversary of your last bite of food, and you feel great. In fact, you've never felt this good in your entire life. So, why stop now?
Oh, man.
What's the matter, Grill?
I don't know, bro. It's just, I've been feeling a little hefty lately, so I decided to weigh myself, and sure enough, that number is definitely higher than it used to be. That's it. I'm going on a diet.
Well, I think you seem fine, but if that's what you want, it's never a bad idea to take harmful, unnecessary food out of your diet.
That's a great idea, bro. Food is unnecessary. I'll just stop eating.
No, that's not what I meant. I was thinking you could cut back on junk food or all those energy drinks of yours, or maybe even swap them out for coffee, which has virtually no calories.
What? Of course not. How could anything that makes me feel this good be a problem?
Incorrect statement detected. Just one energy drink contains up to 2 times the daily limit of added sugar, as recommended by the American Heart Association.
Like I'm listening to you. You just want me to be a part of your Blackwater cult like this schmuck. Fat chance. I'm going on a yeet-only diet. Besides, what's the worst that could happen?
Well, in 1965, 27-year-old Angus Barbieri lived in Tayport, Scotland, and worked at his father's fish and chip shop. He seemed to be living an ordinary, quiet life, but there was just one not-so-little thing Angus wanted to change. Weighing in at 456 pounds, or 207 kilograms, he knew he wanted to make a change and was ready for something drastic. He started by checking himself into the University Department of Medicine at the Royal Infirmary of Dundee, not far from his home, and informed doctors of his decision to fast for 40 days.
See? A fast. Just like what I'm gonna do.
No, Grill, a fast as in 0 calories at all. Angus's doctors, thinking that he likely wouldn't last the full 40 days and believing a short fast would be a good start to his weight loss journey, readily agreed to monitor his progress closely. And so, on June 14, 1965, Angus walked out of the hospital and into a strict fasting diet that would change his life forever. Well, Bean, it's been practiced for centuries, and people fast for a variety of different reasons. Whether it be for their health like Angus or even religious and cultural reasons, each with different levels of intensity and duration. In Judaism, the Yom Kippur fast lasts 25 hours and involves intense prayers and a complete halt of regular activities. Buddhists use fasting for self-control, with monks refraining from eating solid foods after noon every day. Christians fast during Lent, avoiding meat on Fridays and sometimes giving up other luxuries to purify their bodies. During Ramadan, Muslims fast from dawn until sunset, aiming to cultivate piety and gratitude. For Hindus, fasting is often linked to festivals or personal spiritual discipline like the Ekadashi fast, where individuals may partially or completely abstain from food. And Jainism places a strong emphasis on cleansing the body and karma, with fasts ranging from 1 day to over a month, involving varying levels of food abstention. Like I said earlier, people fast for their health as well, often with the main goal of losing weight. One of the most common ways to do that these days is through intermittent fasting, which cycles between periods of fasting and unrestricted eating. But there are a few different ways to go about this. The first I'll mention is Dr. Walter Longo's approach, which features the fasting mimicking diet, where you reduce calorie intake drastically for 5 consecutive days each month to mimic the effects of fasting aimed at boosting longevity and health. Then there's the approach where you consume very low calories, around 500 to 600, for 2 non-consecutive days each week and allow regular eating during the remaining 5 days, also known as the weekly full fast. And though some don't consider this to actually fall under the category of intermittent fasting, the final and most frequently used method is time-restricted eating, which simply shortens your daily eating window to 8 hours followed by 16 hours of continued fasting. During the fasting period, no calories are taken in. This method is appreciated for its simplicity and centers on the timing of eating rather than the specifics of the diet, which may lead to weight loss and better metabolic health. Intermittent fasting stands out from other diets because it doesn't restrict what you eat, just when you eat, making it surprisingly adaptable and sustainable. Modern research has explored the potential benefits fasting can have on the body, and according to a 2022 case study, fasting triggers some interesting shifts in our body's metabolism. During prolonged fasting, the body shifts from using carbohydrates to burning stored fat for energy, entering a metabolic state called ketosis. This process can help lower triglycerides and may have varying effects on cholesterol levels. As the body adapts to using fat for fuel, it produces ketones, which serve as an efficient alternative energy source, particularly for the brain. Fasting also reduces blood sugar and insulin levels, demonstrating the body's ability to adapt to different energy sources. However, elevated ketone levels can become dangerous and lead to a condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is life-threatening for people with type 1 diabetes. Fasting can affect us differently depending on how long it lasts. In the short term, it might make us feel irritable and anxious, but over time, fasting can improve our mood and well-being by boosting serotonin, which helps with mood and pain relief. Sticking to fasting goals can make us feel more in control and accomplished, making it a rewarding experience overall.
Okay, see? I'll eat nothing and I'll get fit and healthy.
Well, Grill, even though there is evidence to support the fasting diet as long as it is done following certain guidelines, there are also some solid arguments to be made against it. For one thing, it may be proven to help shed those pesky pounds, but it's something you'd have to maintain to keep the weight off. Once someone practicing fasting returns to eating normally, the body will revert back and the pounds will, more than likely, return as well. It can also be dangerous for certain people, like those with pre-existing health conditions such as weak immune systems, diabetes or gout, those who are pregnant or breastfeeding, and especially for people with any form of ED. And believe it or not, but fasting, even water fasts where the only thing consumed for the duration of the fast is water, can cause dehydration. That's right, Bean. It's because about 20 to 30% of our daily water intake is derived from the foods we eat. And some experts worry that intermittent fasting could see people turn away from eating balanced, healthy meals rich with the recommended portions of fruits and vegetables.
Okay, so the jury's still out on that one. What about the other diets that are out there? I think my ma did something with some lady's name back in the day.
You're right, Grill. Over the last few decades, we've seen waves of diets come and go, including structured ones like the Jenny Craig diet, which is probably what you're referring to. But one of the more popular ones these days is the ketogenic or keto diet. It is a high-fat, very low-carb, moderate-protein diet that promotes fat burning and can help manage type 2 diabetes. Participants are allowed foods like meats, fatty fish, eggs, oils, dairy, low-carb vegetables, nuts, seeds, and berries, though in moderation. But the key is to avoid grains, high-carb fruits, legumes, sugar, and starchy vegetables, and to stay hydrated, monitor protein intake, and get enough fiber. However, the diet's high saturated fat content and potential health risks make it not recommended for a long-term use. The paleo diet is another popular low-carb diet that emulates a traditional hunter-gatherer's diet by focusing on lean meats, eggs, fruits, and non-starchy vegetables while excluding whole grains and dairy. It claims to have significant health benefits but lacks evidence and comes with some risks. Cutting out dairy, legumes, and grains can lead to deficiencies in calcium, vitamins B and D, and fiber, which are important for overall health. The diet is also high in saturated fats from animal proteins, which can raise cholesterol levels and increase the risk of heart disease. Plus, eating a lot of protein and fat might increase the chances of developing kidney issues and certain types of cancer.
Jeez, there's bad sides to any diet then.
Yeah, I mean, find what works for you and consult your doctor if you're unsure, but basically the best bet is to make healthier food choices and maintain some form of regular exercise. But let's get back to Angus and see if his extreme measures worked for him. As mentioned earlier, he decided to go the fasting route, and in his case, his plan was to consume 0 calories and ingest only black coffee, black tea, and sparkling water for the entirety of the fast with the sole focus of losing weight and becoming healthier. Angus was closely monitored by medical doctors who prescribed him a number of multivitamins and supplements to take every day in order to prevent nutritional deficiencies. So even though he was consuming 0 calories, he was still getting all the nutrients his body needed. As days turned into weeks, Angus's determination overcame his desire to eat. He experienced mood improvements and pride in his accomplishment, surpassing his initial 40-day goal, much to the surprise of his medical team. Feeling good and without any initial significant health issues, he decided to continue the fast to reach his goal weight of 180 pounds.
So he wanted to go from 456 pounds to 180? Jeez.
He sure did. To eliminate temptation, he even left his job at his father's fast food shop. He frequently visited the hospital and often spent the night so his doctors could continue to keep a close eye on him, since there was an extensive list of things that could go wrong while attempting to fast for the outrageous length of time that he was suggesting. As mentioned earlier with fasting, Angus's body quickly went into ketosis and remained in this state throughout the whole ordeal.
So all Buddy was planning on eating was his own fat? For 40 days?
Well, yes and no. Technically, his body was turning his fat into energy. He wasn't actually consuming it himself. That would be weird. But his considerable amount of fat reserves, along with his doctor's supervision and prescribed supplements, would be vital to surviving a fast of this magnitude. For a perfect, albeit disturbing and tragic example of what happens when you fast for extreme amounts of time without these things, just look at the breatharians.
Breath-a-what-agans?
Breatharianism, also known as inedia, is the belief that it is possible to live without consuming anything, relying solely on prana.
They only ate shrimp?
No, Grill, that's prawns. Prana is a word that originates from Sanskrit, the ancient language of Hinduism, and can be roughly translated to English as breath or vital energy, a life force that permeates through all living things and connects them to the grand cosmos.
Uh-huh. And what do these air-loving weirdos do with this force? Let me guess, push things around and shoot lightning out of their fingers?
No, but something almost as unbelievable. Breatharians claim to be able to replace all food and sometimes even water with prana, absorbing energy directly from sunlight and air instead of through the process of eating.
You gotta be kidding me. No food or drink, just sunlight? Who do they think they are, plants?
It does sound suspiciously similar to photosynthesis, doesn't it? They claim that their method is not about starvation, but about substituting physical sustenance with a spiritual source. Breatharians engage in practices like prana yoga, which involves deep breathing and sun gazing to harness energy directly from light.
I'm sorry, back up. Sun gazing? They stare at the sun. Doesn't that burn your eyes?
It sure does. And although sun gazing practitioners advise only gazing at the sun during the first hours of sunrise and last hour of sunset, due to the amount of UV rays being lowest at these times, the levels aren't zero and it is still incredibly dangerous. The retina does not have pain receptors, so you could be slowly burning holes in your retina without even knowing it. That is, until you start to notice permanent dark spots developing in your vision as the damage accumulates over time.
Okay, so like these breatharians have to be all talk, right? Surely there's no one crazy enough to actually starve themselves while burning holes in their eyes.
I wish I could say you were right, Grill. Strangely enough, breatharianism has actually grown in popularity over the last few decades. There are those who claim to put this into practice in countries all around the world, including India, Europe, South America, and even the United States. Take Audra Bear from Minneapolis, Minnesota, for example, who says she spends around 3 hours each day working on her breathing, focusing on prana, and claims to live off tea, juice, and smoothies most of the time. Breathwork helps you to realize who you are and what you need or don't need, Audra said about practicing breatharianism, adding that she never meant to start going without food, but after training herself in breathwork and prana for 40 minutes a day for 5 days, she claims that she wasn't hungry for solid food anymore. Her first fast lasted an alleged 97 days. My energy is heightened, my senses are stronger, and I'm feeling the healthiest I've ever been. However, Audra doesn't recommend people try fasting in this way before first learning the proper breathing techniques. Techniques that she is happy to teach you for $97. The National Health Service, on the other hand, doesn't recommend people practice Audra's diet at all without being under the clinical guidance of a legitimate medical specialist.
Like how Angus did his fast.
Exactly. Audra also revealed that you can choose not to exclusively cut food out of your diet and that she shops often for fruits and vegetables in order to make juice and sometimes even enjoys conventional food for rare celebratory occasions.
Wait, she's eating food? So is she a breatharian or not?
Well, for Audra, it seems she's taken on more of a breatharian-inspired lifestyle. After all, her fast was only from solid food, not food in general. Plus, there's also no way to even confirm that she actually fasted for the full 97 days. So, no matter what she markets herself as, a successful breatharian she is not. All of this to say, one should always be dubious of anyone on the internet promoting extreme health practices, especially when they are trying to sell you something. As you will soon see, blindly trusting health gurus and influencers can have serious and sometimes deadly consequences. Which leads me to self-proclaimed breatharian Jasmuheen, otherwise known as Ellen Grieve. who has been an advocate for breatharianism for decades and claims to have lived mostly on prana, with some teas and the rare consumption of solid food, since 1993. But her claim, and that of all breatharians, of being able to live without consuming any food or drink has, understandably, garnered a hefty amount of controversy. First, there's the science, or rather, lack of any science behind the lifestyle and diet. It is often criticized as pseudoscientific because it goes against the basic biological understanding that humans need food and water to live. And there's no evidence that a human can gain sustenance from air and sunlight. And turns out, when critics take a closer look, they've frequently found that those who claim to follow this diet are actually still eating and drinking. Like in 1999, when the Australian television show 60 Minutes decided to put Jasmuheen to the test and continuously monitor her day-to-day life. The producers wanted to document her living out this far-fetched zero food or beverage lifestyle for a full week.
Oh, good idea. How'd it go?
Well, the test started out in a hotel, but after complaints from Jasmuheen, she was moved to the countryside to finish it all out. But ultimately, for safety reasons, the plug was pulled on the experiment after only 4 days, as she became visibly stressed and showed clear signs of severe dehydration, high blood pressure, and even lost 14 pounds.
Aha! So the truth comes out!
Yes, but not according to her. 4 years after the failed experiment, a video of her surfaced explaining that she was only not able to complete the experiment because of pollution. She claimed that the original room was situated next to a busy highway and that 70% of her nutrients come from fresh air. So, sitting her next to heavy pollution made it hard for this self-proclaimed breatharian to, well, breathe.
Ha! As if.
And sadly, it actually gets worse. She has written about 38 books on the matter, namely one called Living on Light, the Source of Nourishment for the New Millennium, that outlines a 21-day program that is supposed to prepare the body to live without food or water. And a number of people decided to give the whole not eating and living off of prana thing a go, on their own, without the medical supervision that Angus thankfully had. And it did not end well for them.
That is an understatement.
Yeah, you could say that. Scientifically, the health of someone practicing breatharianism would deteriorate pretty quickly. First, without food, the body uses stored energy from glycogen, then starts breaking down muscles and fat, but eventually, that's going to run out. This leads to the drop in heart rate, blood pressure, and temperature, as well as little movements from the person due to excess fatigue from no fuel, explained Rick Miller, a clinical and sports dietitian and spokesperson for the British Dietetic Association. You would likely start to feel confused and could hallucinate, slip into unconsciousness, and there's a real risk of eventually passing away. And lack of water is even more critical. Within a few days to 2 weeks without water, the body quickly becomes dehydrated. This results in a buildup of toxins, kidney failure, and heart problems. Dehydration ultimately leads to seizures, brain damage, and death.
Okay, but have people actually done this? Starved themselves long enough to actually die? All in the name of some spiritual growth or whatever hooey this jazzy lady keeps selling?
Sadly enough, yes. Let's start with a 53-year-old Australian woman, Lanny Morris, whose tale is as heartbreaking as it is disturbing. It all started when Lanny, an already spiritual woman and mother of 9, read Jasmuheen's book, Living on Light, and decided the program outlined within it was something she needed to do. So, on Saturday, June 13th, 1999, she arrived at the Brisbane airport and was picked up by Eugenia and Jim Pesnick, a couple who had overseen around 30 others through their 21-day journey. They brought her to their backyard to live inside a caravan in complete isolation, an integral part of the program where Lanny would have to spend the first 7 days with zero food or water. After that, she was allowed to drink orange juice and only orange juice for the following 2 weeks. Lanny wrote in her diary that she was dreaming of cakes and tea, but also that she was tasting something like bile. She wrote that she believed in the process and actually accused her mind of betraying her body. Then, on day 6 of her isolation, Jim heard an alarming noise from inside the caravan, and when he went to check on Lanny, he found that she had fallen out of bed, and things continued to head downhill fast. Lanny became unable to use her right arm or leg, lost control of her bladder and bowel movements, lost the ability to speak, and even began coughing up a black substance.
What, she have a stroke? And a black substance? Did these kooks even think about talking to a doctor?
Jim and Eugenia didn't want to involve traditional medicine. as they said it would not have understood her journey and would have just stopped any progress she had made. As far as the process is concerned, a doctor's intervention can be fatal, Eugenia had said at the time.
You gotta be kidding me, come on.
Unfortunately, no, and she meant every word of it. Then, on Wednesday, 11 days into her experience, the black substance began to pool within her, and she began to choke. Jim actually tried to play doctor and inserted a tube into Lanny's mouth to help her breathe, which she spit back out. That's when he called an actual medical doctor who was, well, on their side, you could say, as he had been through the 21-day program himself in the past. "I'm having problems, real problems," Jim said. "Should I call the ambulance, and what should I tell them?" Jim finally did call an ambulance. Tragically, after coming down with pneumonia, extreme dehydration, kidney failure, and the complications of a severe stroke, Lanny Morris passed away. An investigation and trial was held following the ordeal. Jim and Eugenia were both found guilty of manslaughter, and Jim was sent to jail for 6 years, and Eugenia for 2.
Dirty no good. Ugh. And what did Miss Airhead, Jasma or whatever, have to say for herself?
Well, she later said that Lanny was basically not doing it right, and that she was not, quote, coming from a place of integrity and did not have the right motivation.
Is she for real right now?
It is pretty unbelievable, but Lanny wasn't the only case either. 31-year-old German kindergarten teacher Timo Deegan, an unnamed Swiss woman in her early 50s, and 49-year-old Australian-born Verity Lynn all passed away after attempting to stick to the extremely dangerous diet and lifestyle. And that's only to name a few.
But how could they keep up with the fast if they were dying? They must have been able to tell something was going wrong. Why didn't they just eat something?
I don't know, Grill. All I can say is that belief is a powerful thing. So powerful that it is capable of leading people down dangerous, scientifically unsound paths, or, in other cases, lead them to accomplish something nearly unbelievable and positive for themselves. Like Angus, whose determination was astoundingly strong enough to continue with his fast, with actual medical supervision, way past the 40-day mark. Like, way past it. 93 days in, doctors had to give him potassium supplements because the levels in his blood had dropped. But when things went back to normal and stayed stable, he was able to stop taking them after day 162 of his fasting. Meanwhile, Angus's blood glucose levels also started to drop. Remarkably, he didn't show any of the usual effects of hypoglycemia. It was a clear sign that his body was efficiently tapping into its fat reserves for energy. And despite these significant changes, Angus was doing surprisingly well, walking around and living his life almost normally. These first few months were crucial as Angus's body seamlessly transitioned into a state of sustained fasting, all under the watchful eye of his healthcare team. And after the first 100 days had passed, his body really began to show some intriguing changes. More and more minerals began showing up in his urine, like sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, along with something called inorganic phosphate, which suggested that the body was breaking down not just excess fat, but possibly soft tissue and even some bone mass. A kind of deep clean, if you will.
Ugh. So his body was basically eating itself, from the inside out?
Technically, in a way, yes. But despite the pretty big changes in his life, he was remarkably still able to continue living his life as normal, except for one pretty regular day-to-day activity. That is, in case you were wondering how not eating any food affected his toilet time.
I was not.
Well, now that you mention it, nothing going in, what's there to come out?
Well, Grill, it's said that he only made those specific trips to the bathroom every 40 to 50 days.
Man, that sure would free up a lot of time.
Right? To support his body during the zero-calorie intake, Angus took yeast for the first 10 months of his fast. Packed with B-complex vitamins, yeast kept his nervous system sharp, skin healthy, and energy levels up. But he wasn't out of the woods yet, and as he approached his goal weight, Angus did end up facing a brief spike in blood calcium levels, known as hypercalcemia. Surprisingly, this normalized on its own, and was likely due to his body adjusting to the massive weight loss. He was dropping weight quickly and was losing around 22 pounds a month with an average of over a pound per day. Amazingly, even after going so long without solid food, Angus's glucose metabolism tests continued to come back normal. This incredible feat highlights just how resilient the human body is, capable of maintaining essential functions even under extreme conditions. He confessed to having forgotten the taste of food during the fast, and during the last several months, Angus started to relax a little bit on his beverage restrictions and began adding a small amount of milk or sugar to his coffee and tea.
Sacrilege! Adequately brewed coffee does not require such additives.
But there is a problem that we haven't touched on. When he does reach his goal and finally starts eating again, that could really be when the trouble starts. And by trouble, I mean Angus's life was actually at risk, as it is often during the refeeding process that people who have gone through prolonged fasting actually passed away.
Hold on. Guy goes ages without food, no problem. And then what? Finally eats again and dies? That just doesn't seem fair.
Unfortunately, it's true. If the transition from prolonged fasting to eat again, also known as refeeding, is done incorrectly, it can cause some serious problems, especially for those with prior health concerns. There are 2 notable cases of people dying during their transitions back to eating due to heart failure, something they both already showed signs of before the fast even began.
Okay, so their hearts, that were already weak, couldn't handle the strain from fasting to going back to eating. But Angus was doing well and started the fast healthy, so he should be good, right?
You'd think, but there is something that can occur even when the person was healthy prior to starting the fast called refeeding syndrome. This happens when refeeding is done too quickly, causing dangerous shifts in body fluids and minerals. The body, after being starved for so long, suddenly gets a surge of insulin that pulls nutrients into cells, leading to low levels of critical electrolytes like phosphate, potassium, and magnesium, which can lead to life-threatening complications such as heart failure, respiratory failure, and arrhythmias. To prevent this from happening, it's important to reintroduce food gradually. Start with small amounts and carefully monitoring and balancing electrolytes and vitamins. One example of this happening is an otherwise healthy young woman who fasted for 210 days, only to die during the refeeding, with really the only possible explanation being refeeding syndrome.
Okay, that's awful. But what about Angus? Was he okay or not?
Well, Howard, drumroll please.
No.
Okay, well, he did it! Angus met his goal weight of 180 pounds. And on June 30th, 1966, 382 days.
382 days? Man, I knew it was going on for months, but over a year? That's crazy.
And 276 pounds lost later, he ate his first bite of food. With press around him, he made headlines as he sat down to take his first bite of food in over a year. A boiled egg, a piece of bread with butter, and a coffee. Nice. He told those gathered around him, "It went down okay. I feel a bit full, but I thoroughly enjoyed it." When Angus finished his fast, he was carefully monitored and his essential nutrients were gradually reintroduced, which ensured a smooth transition from fasting to normal eating. This included a diet high in carbohydrates, which helped quickly reestablish his body's normal response to glucagon, a hormone that plays a key role in managing blood sugar levels.
Okay, so the guy did it. But how can we know he was actually sticking to it the whole time? Like how some of these controversial breatharian peoples supposedly just faked it sometimes.
With the strict rules of his diet, that's a very fair question. It was pretty clear from the consistency of his weight loss as well as the results of his testing that showed his body was using its own fat for energy and not from food, that he wasn't eating. Also, his stable low blood sugar and the ketones in his system clearly proved that Angus didn't secretly consume any food or calories. Following his prolonged fast, many would think that Angus could easily slide back into his old eating habits and gain his weight right back as a result. But Angus continued to feel great and was determined to keep the weight off. And a checkup 5 years following the end of his fast revealed that he was sitting comfortably at 196 pounds. He went on to get married to a woman named Mary and father 2 sons, Andrew and Fraser. 24 years later, Angus passed away on September 7th, 1990, at 51 years old and
51? But that's still so young. You would think the weight loss would have helped him live longer.
Well, I think it would be pretty safe to assume that he might have passed away much earlier on if he had continued living at his highest weight. Thanks to the fast, Angus was able to live a seemingly healthy, normal life for quite some time. But you're right, 51 is a young age to pass away. Some people assume that Angus put the weight back on before his death, but most reports say that he had still only gained back about 15 pounds at the time of his passing. An unidentified source out of the UK officially requested Angus's death certificate and discovered that 2 of the causes of death listed were stomach bleeding and obesity. though that can't tell us if it was obesity at the time of passing or effects of his years spent in an obese state. The successful results of Angus Barbieri's fast were rare because of the potential dangers linked to cases similar to his. So, of course it must be said, don't try this at home.
Okay. I won't be going on an all-out not-eating diet like Angus, or those breath is food people. Maybe intermittent fasting? Or maybe I'll just keep a closer eye on what I eat.
I think that's pretty wise, Grill. Oh, but before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because just like nutrients to the body, your one sub keeps us healthy and thriving. And if you enjoyed this video, then check out this one about the astronaut who was forgotten in space and the woman on Earth who found him.